Okay, you've been listening to Raul Castro there on this historic day as he meets with President Obama, the first U.S. president to go to Cuba in 90 years. We did hear, however, that while this is something, it's not quite enough. Castro saying a little bit more is needed from the United States. Just exactly what is that? I'm joined right now by Boris Epstein and also by Leslie Marshall. Boris, you heard that and you saw there's a little bit of a dig towards President Obama in the United States.
Absolutely.
Why?
A couple things. First of all, Raul Castro is going first. He's getting to deliver his point of view first, getting to tell Barack Obama how he feels, and really chiding him like a school kid.
Well, it is his country.
It's his country, but we're the United States of America, the most powerful country on earth. And Barack Obama did a favor to Cuba by opening it up and going there personally, the first president in 90 years to do so. And again, the State Department should have insisted that A, Raul Castro come to the airport, and B, Barack Obama get to speak first.
Are you slighted at all by that, Leslie? Those two moves, not coming to the airport to greet our president and then insisting on going first and not really sounding too excited about any of this, but rather saying we've got a lot more work to do.
You know, at the end of the day, whether it comes to peace, a change hopefully in government for the people of Cuba and our relationship with them going forward, or economic interest on both sides, I do think he should have been at the airport, but I'm not going to cry over that spilt milk. I do think it's his country and he should speak first. I have no problem with any leader speaking first when it is their country, and I'm not surprised that he's saying this is a good first step. This is not the deal that we would want, because that's what he needs to do to remain strong, or to at least have the illusion that this is just the beginning. And I think it is the beginning
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is a guy who doesn't look so happy. He doesn't look so thrilled that Obama is there. You'd think he might have started the entire speech with a big warm smile. Right. He might have said this is a big day historically for both our countries. Think of what we can do together. Instead, he's reading quite clearly from a script without a lot of energy, not much of a smile. He doesn't seem to be really that engaged in what he's doing. Is this just because he's a lousy politician and his brother was all that?
No, he's a pretty good politician. He's been around for a long time. He's a committed communist, maybe even more committed than Fidel Castro is. Fidel Castro was sort of the figurehead. If you look back at the famous meetings of the 80s between Gorbachev and Reagan in Geneva and Reykjavik, there was positivity. There was smiles, and the initial meetings were very positive and much more open than this speech. And even the speeches back then had a lot more of an air of positivity about them and hopefulness for the future. This is Raul Castro saying, well, thanks for coming, but I wish you brought more, and thanks for trying with Congress, but not enough for us.
Well, look, I just kind of wonder the motivations behind doing this. Economic, you can understand. I think a lot of U.S. corporations see a tremendous amount of potential there in Cuba, and so we wish them a lot of luck with that. But I also wonder strategically, is it smart for us to have, and I would probably argue, yes, you want to have as many friends as you can have within your neighboring community. You want to have some friends close by. I guess the big question, however, Leslie, is can you trust Cuba to really be a friend in times of need? I mean, we're worried about North Korea. We're worried about, Russia, not because it's going to be communist again, but because Putin is such a wild card. And Cuba is close to our shores and represents something in that sense. Can we trust them?
I don't think that we can trust, quite frankly, any of our allies 100%. And if we look at the relationship that we have, where we do have, an economic open door like China, we certainly don't trust China. We've done things with Russia who we don't trust. Now, when we look at geographic proximity, and I think that's an excellent point, Trish, to bring up, it can't be avoided. I think, quite frankly, when we look at, not just as the President Castro of Cuba has mentioned the Zika virus, but when we look at the path of drug trade with Central America and the geographic location that Cuba has, and what the United States can do with them with regard to terrorism, with regard to drug trade, and quite frankly, even the path of the flux of immigrants that we have seen from Central American countries. I think that this is necessary. It's long overdue. We have not been attacked or threats of attack by Cuba. And quite frankly, I think Cuba needs us more than we need them.
I would agree with that.
And President Obama knows that.
Let me ask you guys this. I mean, would this have happened if Hugo Chavez was still alive, Boris?
This was a big thing for Barack Obama. He wanted it as part of his legacy. So I think he would have done anything and everything to get there, even if America didn't get anything in return, or the Cuban people.
The United States of America. And I just question whether this that we're seeing unfolding today would have happened had Hugo Chavez still been alive. Leslie, your thoughts?
You know, I thought of that myself, and honestly, I think that the United States has been waiting for Raul's big brother to die because I don't agree that Raul is more of a communist than Fidel. If you look at some of the actions he's taken, especially with regard to the economy, in order to remain a figurehead, at some point you have to give something to the American not the American people, but the Cuban people in his position, and he knows that they are just so isolated, and especially after the death with Hugo Chavez and the change in dynamics politically in nations around the world, Cuba cannot be this isolated going forward.
They don't have they don't have the revenue stream in Venezuela to help support their good friends over in Cuba anymore. So that's also a component to all of this. Venezuela is less important to Cuba. But the reason I bring it up is we were talking about terrorism earlier and Cuba harboring these terrorists. We know that Venezuela was able to harbor some Islamic fighters. It's been a problem in the tri-border region of Latin America, an area where Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay all meet, basically no man's land down there. Nobody takes responsibility for it. And there's been some concern that potentially they could hide out in Cuba as well. Given this friendship that we are now embarking on with Cuba, is that something that we hopefully will no longer have to worry about as we think about Cuba from a national security standpoint, Boris?
Hopefully, but again, only if we trust them. And Leslie said we can't trust any of our allies. I think Britain and France would probably disagree. They hope we do trust them. And Israel used to be a country that was confident in our trust under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State. That's changed. So we do have to have allies who we can trust. Cuba is not a country who we can trust. You look at what they've been doing to their dissidents just over the last few days and weeks. They're cracking down on dissidents. So as far as terrorism goes, we have no idea what kind of actor Cuba is going to be, and I think the safe assumption is they're not going to be nearly as helpful as Barack Obama hopes. In fact, Cuba could continue to do whatever they've been doing while getting the economic benefits that we are now bestowing upon them.
So why do it then? It's money, it's business.
It's
we want an opportunity to have a tourism industry down there, Leslie, or is it let's get to them, make friends with them before the likes of North Korea is there?
You know what? Nations are businesses, in a sense, wrapped in different colored bows. And this is nothing but the bottom line, first and foremost. Secondly, the relationship comes later. It doesn't mean that you do a deal with the devil necessarily, and I don't feel this is a deal with the devil. But even when you look at relationships with allies that we've had for years, Germany is a perfect example. We didn't always have Merkel as chancellor. We didn't always have the loving relationship that we've had with Germany as of recent days. This is a beginning. This is something that needs to be built. Trust not only needs to be built, but it needs to be earned.
Listen, as far as Germany is concerned, it's completely incorrect. If you look at Schroeder and Helmut Kohl beforehand, there were great relationships there between the German chancellors and the American presidents, going back to Reagan and then, of course, Clinton, between him and Kohl. So I completely disagree as far as that's concerned. Again, you're looking at Cuba, you're looking at these septuagenarians, octogenarians who are leading Cuba and cracking down on their people, not letting them speak freely, not letting them travel to the United States. What is America getting as part of this deal outside of business?
I think that's
and what do the Cuban people get?
It's a fair question. I mean, you look at some of our friends at Saudi Arabia, for example, right? And you could make the point, well, we're getting something out of that because we need a friend in the Middle East. Right. We need access to their oil market. And so there are some reasons for that. Hang on. I believe Mr. Castro has just finished speaking. Let's listen in now to see what President Obama says.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that was President Obama addressing the Cuban people and addressing President Castro, the brother, of course, of Fidel Castro, Raul Castro, on this historic day, the first president of the United States to visit Cuba in 90 years. A lot of people are asking why now, given that there haven't been any real changes in the political culture there in Cuba, given that it is still a communist country. Why now? Business reasons, strategic reasons. We're going to talk a little bit about all these possibilities with Republican strategist Boris Epstein and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall. Okay, Leslie, why now in your view?
Well, I think there are a few things. One, they really need us, and they were open and willing. It wasn't the case in the past. Fidel Castro wasn't going to do this, and there were other presidents that weren't going to do this. So you have a willingness on both sides, one. Two, to your point, you have Chavez gone, and a changing landscape going forward, whether it is with regard to the environment, to health, Zika virus right now, with immigration, because Cuba can be affected by that, and the drug trade, and of course terrorism. And biggest thing is the economy. Cuba needs us, and when we look to what the president said about the internet, he is spot on with that.